Phoebe set it up, and they went for sushi, and there Jared was with the sign, and she knew Jared from school and liked him, but she didn't suspect he was going to ask her at all. It was a big surprise. They weren't even dating. And we had seen him once before at a military seminar Maren was interested in going to. And she had said, Ma, he's really nice. And I turned around and I waved to him, but I didn't really know who he was either. But he asked her, and then she texted me, Mom, Jared asked me. I mean, she was excited, and she was so happy. I mean, when she got home, she was sitting at the end of the sofa yakking and yakking and yakking and yakking. And finally I looked at her and I went, are you done yet? And she's like, no, I'm not done. I'm so excited. So she was overjoyed and excited, and Chris wasn't even on her radar anymore. None of the problems, none of him asking her to the prom, none of him hurting himself. That was off of her radar because she was so excited, and she couldn't wait to get her dress, and she really liked Jared. And of course, social media. There was some kind of Instagram where all the girls put their gowns on there. And then that night it was like, Jared's putting on there, she said yes, and Maren's like, prom with Jared. And so all this social media stuff is happening. And if I could bet my life, Chris was home watching it. That's my intuition, right? That he was watching this and he was stirring up and he was starting to really freak out silently. That's how I look at this story, that he started to fester through those next months because he knew his friend asked Maren and she said yes. So what a blow to his ego, right, as a young man. And he already had a mental issue, and he now, his infatuation with Maren is now turning to hate because now he's looking at her as somebody that's hurting him, And that's really, that's the story, Simone. That is the story. And then he made comments, and he started bringing a knife to school, and he said things to his friends that were really off, and then the morning happened.
This simple yet mature, responsible act of reporting a problem before it became an issue should have been enough to keep Maren and her classmates safe at Jonathan Law High School. However, it wasn't. It was prom day, and not everyone had fun on their mind. 16-year-old Chris Plaskon reportedly had no date for the junior prom. His dad said later that he was upset he couldn't go with Maren and that he heard voices telling him to kill her. All seemed well when he was dropped off at school on that morning, April 25, 2014, about 7 a.m. Just before 7:15 a.m., security camera footage from inside the high school showed Chris and Maren converse briefly before entering a stairwell. Inside that stairwell, Chris pulled a knife and stabbed Maren in her throat and chest. After a few moments, a teacher entered the stairwell and tried to pull Maren's attacker off of her. He was taken into custody as emergency services were notified, and when he encountered the school resource officer moments later in the principal's office, he simply said, "I did it, just arrest me." The community of Milford was in shock. How could something like this happen at school, and more pressing, why? If they had to choose families to be involved in such an astonishing tragedy, they wouldn't be these. Donna Cimarelli, Maren's mother, had roots here. The Plaskons were considered well off, with family ties to names in local politics and law enforcement. Chris lived with his parents and 4 brothers, 2 younger, 2 older. No one would think it would be these kids. Instead of attending their highly anticipated junior prom that night, Maren's classmates were instead photographed holding a beachside vigil for their slain friend. Devastated and confused, Maren's boyfriend Jared held up the perfectly coordinated blue dress she never had the chance to dance in. By the time Maren had been laid to rest, Chris was reportedly being treated for psychosis, on suicide watch and lockup. Immediately, the defense team brought up mental health issues, leading to their motion of intent to use insanity as a defense. However, they never had the opportunity to present this evidence, as Chris ultimately took a plea deal nearly 2 years after Maren's murder. In March 2016, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with parole eligibility and review after 13 years due to his age at the time of Maren's murder.
I mean, I have a firsthand story that was told to me by someone very close to the family, and I don't really know how accurate the story is because I really don't know this person very well. but it does kind of, I guess if you want to look at this in a different way, if you want to look at this as a energetic, sort of spiritual, sort of Shakespearean kind of thing, apparently, I believe he's one of 5 boys. And apparently there is a younger brother who has physical disabilities. And when he was young and born, he had to be in the hospital for a long time. Again, I don't know how accurate the story is, but supposedly when all of this trauma was going on with this other son, Chris was sent to go live with an aunt. And this aunt became like the light of his life. And he got all his attention and love and affection from this aunt. And the story goes that this aunt died of cancer. And it was almost as if Chris's light was snuffed out at that time in his life, because that was his go-to person, because there was all of this attention being put on this other brother. And Chris was the middle child, and something was wrong there. And I don't know what it was, if it was, an emotional problem or whatever. And a few people believe that Maren replaced that light for him. And she was that person that gave him attention, that person that was nice to him, that person that, felt bad for him. And when Maren rejected him, a few people would say that he just couldn't take it anymore. And unfortunately, Maren was the one that had to suffer for it. So, that is another way of looking at the story. And I did hear it from someone that is pretty close to the family. So that's how they saw it. And so it does make sense. It's not justifiable at all, but it makes sense to where his psyche was. And I understand that. I really do understand how something like that could be, traumatic. It's like PTSD. He was traumatized in some way, right. And it wasn't addressed. I knew that I had to do something after Maren passed. It was clear that she was speaking right into my ear, and I knew that it was going to be to help protect young women, because as in, I'm sure Maren's case and many other cases, and I remember being 15 and 14 and hearing and seeing people do things that were wrong, and I never reported it. And I just think that we need to tell the kids, listen, if you feel something in your gut that makes you feel uncomfortable, then it's wrong. And if that's how you feel, it's worth reporting. And if nothing comes of it, oh well. But if something comes of this, and it's because of you that you stopped something terrible from happening, you have done the correct thing as a human being. And you can't be afraid that your friends are going to out you or you're going to be the snitch, because those days are over. It's really see something, say something now on every level, because there's just too much violence in the world right now. And these kids really, they truly, like our parents told us, they have to have eyes in the back of their head. I do lectures, and my lectures are I work with a book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker, who is a threat assessment specialist. So I read the first chapter of that book, which is about a young woman who, it's a true story, about a young woman who ignores her instincts and her intuition about a situation with a young man in the hallway, ignores her intuition, and ends up being attacked. And so I read that, and then I go into a timeline of Maren and all of the things that were concerning leading up to the day of her murder. I lecture about red flags. I lecture about pre-incident indicators. So, yes, what you're saying is exactly why I have this foundation, because it's the things that the school missed, that I missed, that are the poor, innocent, bystanding kids that heard and saw things, that have to live with this for the rest of their life, because they're always saying, maybe if I had said something, Maren would still be here,
2020 marks the 6th year since Maren's murder on April 25th.
On that date, we are having our 4th annual gala in the venue where Maren was supposed to have her prom. We are calling it a magical night to remember. We're going to be selling tickets for that, and that day is going to be very emotional but yet vibrant, because it's kind of backwards, right? Because it's the anniversary of her passing, but we are going to make it a celebration, because we all feel, and I do know, that I work this entire foundation right now with Maren. So we are going to make sure that we celebrate the energy that she would have that evening at her prom, and we're going to just raise money, and we're going to continue to help save girls' lives.
If you're in or around Connecticut or would like to make a donation to the Maren Sanchez Home Foundation, visit www.marensanchezhomefoundation.org to find out how you can support the tremendous work founder and CEO Donna Cimarelli is doing for young women. For further links and articles pertaining to this case, see the show notes for this episode. Until next time, lovelies, don't be scared.